Welcome to We're Not the Same. I'm Brian.
I'm Katie.
And we are here talking all about why we're not the same. And on this episode, we're diving deep into marriage, how to handle health issues and just getting through everything. And also how to bring your spouse along the journey of waking up to this world, health, faith, not wearing masks. Oh, it's all in here today. So we're diving deep and we're excited to have you along the journey with us.
So let's dive in. All right, let's start this podcast off like the professionals.
Let's do it.
So I feel like we have been so bad at marketing this podcast. I'm the marketing team.
I've had a bunch of guys come in here for quotes. We've had a lot of like house things going on, and I had a bunch of guys come in and do quotes for plumbing and all this stuff, and they see our set, and most people don't like, and it's in our bedroom. It's not like that's where we have to do it.
Why do you have all these lights and cameras in your bedroom? It's like either a podcast or OnlyFans. Like that's probably what they're guessing.
We'd probably make a lot more money if it was OnlyFans.
$0 or.
But with the mics, I feel like it's a little bit more clearly a podcast.
Well, people are freaks.
That's true. But back to the marketing. Like I have handed out some QR codes to these folks to try to do some marketing.
Yeah. Well, once we like know that they'll like our podcast.
That's right. Yeah.
Kind of test the waters with people.
Very true.
But anyways, go ahead and give us a 5-star review if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you're listening. I've heard that really helps to like boost your podcast in the algorithm. So make sure you're following or subscribed, or I don't even know what it is. And then if you're watching here on YouTube, make sure to subscribe, like, turn on the notification bell, all of those things. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because I won't remember at the end.
Yeah, and the best way to like reach us and get in contact with us is probably through Instagram.
Well, I know, but we need to push like the podcast on the podcast platform.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just saying, like, if you wanted to DM, like, if you wanted to reach out to us as quickly as possible.
On YouTube too. Like,
that's true. We'll see comments.
I check everything. So anyway, anywhere you want to reach out, we'll find you.
Cool.
And thank you all for the feedback we have received. Which has been more personal. So if you want to make those personal positive feedback that we've gotten more public, we'd love a 5-star review.
Yes, please.
But it just is really encouraging and makes us feel very loved and excited to, keep on keeping on.
This has been something that we've always talked about doing. I know we talked about it before, but like we also, and this kind of covers on the topic we're talking about. Like we always say, like we're better together.
Yeah.
I guess that could have been another podcast name. But
I think we did look at that one. There's like a ton already.
But we do things we've always said like better together. And I feel like this is something that's really sticking and we're excited about each week. And it's a lot of work, but we enjoy it and we really like talking to you all. And that's why we're here.
Yep. All right. Let's get into the topic of the day.
So segueing into that, we're talking all about marriage today. And our marriage, and I think
better together.
Heart. So I think some things that we really want to talk about and cover today is kind of like twofold. One is waking up to this world, all the things we've talked about so far and all the things we will talk about. I will say most of it, maybe 98, 99, okay, maybe 100%, started with Katie and her ability to do research, and she has amazing discernment. That is definitely a gift from God that she has. And I had to be pulled along in some of this. Some things I jumped right on, other things took me a little while. And I think that can be true for a lot of couples out there. There may be one who's a little more invested than the other in kind of waking up and going against the grain because that's not natural for us. So we want to talk a little bit more about that and what that looked like and how I got there. And then also just marriage in general, getting through struggles, things that often rip folks apart or can have a lot of issues in their marriage. Like we've been through a lot of life circumstances as those listeners who have been around have heard. But we just want to talk more about that and get it out there. And I know a lot of you probably have struggles in your marriages just as everybody does. We just want to talk more about that.
Yeah. So I know a lot of people listening probably know our story already. So we won't like dive deep into the realm of every little detail, which I feel like we're really bad at. Like we're really good at going into all the details. We're bad at staying surface level. But just for those who may not know or who may, 5 years from now when we're super famous, we have like millions of listeners. They come back and they don't know our full story.
Love it.
Do this for them.
Yep.
So we are high school sweethearts. So we met in high school. We started dating in high school and never stopped.
Yep. I think we had 1 week of that we like broke up in high school over like what college we were going to. And then we were like, well, this is dumb. And we got back together and ended up at the same college and
went to the same college, did the same major, had the same internships, had the same job.
Yep.
Our
families both live here.
Yeah, we
in
grew
the
up
same
in the
city.
same area. I always tell people like we're just the same person.
Yep.
We're just the male and female version of the same person. No, we do have our unique
We do, but our stories are very similar.
But yes, like our life stories are very similar.
Yeah.
So we have been together since we were 16 years old, and we're 30 and 31 now.
Ooh. I'm your older man. She always talked about wanting an older man, and I'm 6 months.
Half the year I get my older man.
Yep. So we just celebrated our 7 year in December and 7 years married and 14 years together.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to that. We've been together more than 50% of our lives coming up.
Next year when we're 32, that'll be half our lives together.
Yeah.
So
very cool. So that's a little bit of our background.
Yeah. So like you said already, we've only been married 7 years in one sense, for those listening who have been married way longer and probably have way more advice than we do. But we do have a unique story where we've been through like a lot of crap in our 7 years that I feel like people usually go through later in life, and just all the things that everything is like arrows into your marriage, I feel like, and you have to shield against them.
Yeah.
I was reading about the armor of God today, so
very good.
All that on my mind.
Nice. Yeah, and we've been memorizing James 1, which is all about count it all joy, my brothers, when you face trials of various kinds.
There you go.
Yep. So that has been a struggle for us, but I think we've done a really good job at that now, like looking back. And seeing the way that God was moving in our lives and getting us to the place where we are today, as hard as that was, I think that has brought us peace now in a lot of the challenges that we faced. So when we talk about challenges, like some of those ones going back to, and we talked about it a little bit, I think, is Katie lost her dad in 2019. I had thyroid cancer in 2020. Katie was pregnant kind of through all of that. And our second daughter was born around all that time, which is a great thing, but it's also just a mix of all the things that were going on.
Yeah. It was like the pregnancy was a struggle.
Yep.
With stress and everything.
I almost lost my job during COVID too, kind of all that
like
time
twice.
period. Yeah, like twice. That's true.
2 different times. We've had just other health challenges in our marriage. Just the stress, just the more normal stresses of life and stuff like that. So let's just start with the first thing, which is having kids, and like, how do you keep your marriage going through having kids?
I think the place I want to start here is, and there's also biblical to back me up. For me, and what we talked about before we had kids, was making sure that you were my number, God first, and then you, but in a sense of you before the kids.
Yeah.
And I think that's really hard to do because, we obviously have a very strong bond, but there is something different about having a kid and like just an outpouring of love and, whatever. So it can be a challenge, but I think having that mindset, at least, of making sure that you were always first, and maybe I didn't always get there, but having that conversation and being top of mind, I think was huge and helpful.
Yeah. And I feel like I constantly like have to remind myself to do that too, because it's all day long. My number one is the kids. And so then trying to shift to when you get home, then, I mean, it's pretty easy because I want to focus on you and I want to, hear how your day was and, be a wife, go from mom mode to wife mode. But it is challenging and I'm probably not very good at it, but I do try.
Yeah. So right now, like think to yourself, like what's your number one in your marriage? Are you thinking about your spouse or your kids? Like what are you prioritizing?
Well, and before we had kids, you would hear people say, put the marriage first, like put your marriage above your kids. And I kind of thought that was terrible. Like, I was like, how can you do that? You know, like your kids should always come first above anything. And obviously that doesn't apply to the extreme situations where we're talking about abuse or anything like that, but just in general.
Yeah.
Well, like, because people will say, well, if your kids are being abused by one of the parents, then you shouldn't be putting the marriage first. You should leave the marriage and take the kids to a safe place.
Sure. Yeah.
He doesn't hear all the like naysayer things that I feel like I, you know, see other people talking about.
Yes. You see the more darkness of the world that's going on.
Yeah.
Because you're aware of it more.
Yeah. So anyways, I hate when people give so many like justifications, but I understand why people do too, caveats and things like that. Anyways, then I realized that no, you really do, because the marriage is the foundation of the family. And so you really do need to prioritize that, because if you fall into not being in good partnership, that's not good for the kids. And so by putting the marriage first, you are putting the kids first in the sense of giving them a healthy life and a healthy example of what a strong marriage looks like.
Yeah, which is so critically important, right? Setting the example for them. And the other thing too is that what I was going to say is, I talked about this before also, is like I've always struggled with the concept of like, oh, you should put God first, because I'm like, how do you not put your family first?
Yeah.
And all that. And what it comes down to is like, when you put the right things in the right order, the other things get pulled up and put all in the right order. So like if you put God first and really focus on that relationship, everything else is going to be elevated, because that's what is right and is true.
And you're going to be like, it makes you a better person.
Yes.
When you have a stronger relationship with God, you're your best self, and therefore your cup is pouring over and can
so then I feel
fill others.
Exactly. So I feel like it's like God and then your marriage. Again, if you're really strong in your marriage, that will then pull the relationship up with your kids, and again, setting the example and all of that. So it's helpful to hear. Like, I don't think I ever heard, or maybe heard and didn't believe, like you're saying, like it really does work though, if you do it and commit to doing that order. And it's not always 100%, but if you have it top of mind and you actively think about it and try to do it, I think it's important.
Yeah. I don't think, just like with anything else, you're not going to be perfect at it all the time, but just making the effort. So like the practical things I feel like are that we try to prioritize our time together. So whether it's in the evenings after the kids go to bed, you know, we have things that we both work on. We've gone through different seasons in the past of like both being really intense working on stuff, and then our marriage was kind of not as good because we weren't having any time together. So then we would kind of swing back the other way, and then our projects were not doing well, so because we were just spending time together. So it's really hard. I feel like it's really hard to just strike the perfect balance of getting done the things that need to get done and also prioritizing our time together. But I think we've learned that we definitely have to have that time, you know, just watching a TV show together, or now we do this, which it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. This is our little project at the moment, and also spending time together. So I think that's why it's going well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think from a practical standpoint too, something that I've been doing more recently that I found helpful is, shockingly, more prayer, in the sense of like, before I come in the door when I get home, like no matter what craziness there was during the day, like I just say a really quick prayer of like, Lord, help me be present for my family. Let me leave behind the work, and let me just be, you know, the best dad and husband I can be.
Aww.
And I don't do it every day, but like I try to and do that before I walk in the door. And I think that helps ground me, and again, tries to keep that order right.
That's so sweet, honey. I didn't know that he did that.
It's these things that I haven't always done, but I look for, you know, growth and something I'm still trying to grow in. And like, I want to do a podcast episode on this once I feel like a little bit more of it figured out.
Yeah.
About being like the spiritual leader of the family. I think that's so critical, especially as as the husband and father, to play that role.
Yeah.
I am so incredibly blessed to have you as a wife, and that you're such a strong leader. And so have that strong discernment that you naturally help this family so much in that leadership perspective, which I think is great, and which is why I think we make a really good team. But I know it is my biblical role to be that spiritual leader, and I want to fulfill that role better than I'm doing right now.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things where as we know, as we've said many times, I like latch on to something to learn about, and I just like dive deep, and I'm just learning all the things. And I feel like that's one of those things of being like the spiritual leader. And so we're both kind of down here, like not really knowing about it. And then I jump way ahead, and then I kind of expect you to just in one conversation of me telling you stuff, like get to where I'm at, which isn't always fair because I've had time to think through things and process things and see, learn things from others who are talking about it. And, you're just hearing from me randomly about it. Like, oh, you need to be the spiritual leader.
Okay.
Yeah. You're like, how do I do that? So I think it takes time. And I feel like we have both been learning so much on our faith and everything. So I feel like we're in a pretty good spot right now on our journey, like understanding that it's like a never ending journey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I want to come back to that because I want to talk more about like that, you kind of jumping up and then me coming, because I think we can talk a lot about that with kind of everything you've learned and kind of how we've woken up to a lot of things. But I do want to say, I think something that's helped our marriage too is building a community of both guys for me and girls for you. So I think we've talked about this too. Like girls are a little more naturally like
men and women.
Men and women. Yeah.
We're in our 30s.
Yeah. We're old. Men and women. So it's good. Like you have a women's group and like
women's groups, moms groups.
You're pretty much constantly connected on Instagram with like friends or like-minded people or all that. I think generally men don't have a lot of friends. They might have some buddies to watch sports or whatever, but nobody really have deep conversations with. So it's been like 7 months or so. But a buddy of mine invited me to a small group. It's called a discipleship group where we meet once a week for an hour and a half in the morning on Wednesday mornings. Thank you, Katie, for getting up with the kids. It's a big sacrifice.
I guess I can do it one day a week. Like now you're ousting to the world that you're the one who gets up with the kids every day, which I'm very thankful for.
We make a good team.
Yeah.
But I think that has been incredibly helpful for both myself, but also for our marriage, like to have a group of guys who can just openly and honestly talk about their life, their marriage, their goals, know that we are in it together. We're not alone in our experiences. I think a lot of men can feel alone in the problems that they're having, or maybe the way their wife acts or is, has different, emotions or whatever.
The drama.
But it is helpful to have that perspective with other guys. So I would encourage you, if you're a guy, try to find a group through your church or work or somebody to just have that group of people to be able to talk to. And same for the women too.
I think a big part of it too has been learning how to humble ourselves, to listen to others who are not necessarily older than us. I mean, I would say for the most part older than us, but just more experienced than us in different ways. Just as we're more experienced than some in certain ways, there's a lot of ways like faith, for example, where there's people who are way ahead, way further down the path than us. And so just being able to recognize that they are ahead of us and we can benefit from that, because most people want to bring others along on the journey. I mean, that's what we want to do for people who maybe need help in certain areas. And so I feel like most people, they want to help others. And so we can be the students for those people, and that in turn also makes them feel good that they have somebody to give advice to, because it always feels good when somebody, it's kind of recognizing that person to say, hey, we think you're doing a great job at this and we want to learn from you. Like, I mean, that's an amazing compliment.
Yes. That is a huge change. And I feel like you hear that in like,
I feel like because
life advice people, like seek people who are better than you, but like, when you actually do it, just like all this other things, like I feel like we're at the point now where like that's exciting, or at least I'm excited about. Like, let me find like our chiropractor is, like a little over 10 years or from us or whatever, and has like teenage. Like, I want to sit down and like, what did you do as a spiritual leader? Like, what does it look like for you in the household? Like, what did you do? And like, I'm just excited to be learning from others.
Yeah.
Just as excited I am to do this and try to engage other people who don't have the same life experiences as we do. Yeah, and we were not always like that. That is definitely something that's changed.
Well, what I was going to say is I feel like life was more obvious in the past. You know, like we did
100%.
all the right things by the book, you know, going to school, getting the good grades, getting the jobs, you know, getting married, starting family, just kind of, it sounds bad to say it this way, but like checking the boxes, you know? And so it wasn't, we were just naturally good at those things, or we were raised well to be able to know how to do those things.
Those are the priority.
Yeah. And so now that we have kind of different priorities and we're not as sure, you know, the path isn't as clear at this point. So you need people who are ahead of you to kind of guide you on what to do, or at least to give you their experience. And then you kind of just pick and choose what you want to listen to.
Yeah. I shared this with my discipleship group and stuff. And it's interesting to hear that like a lot of people, I think, and even talking to my dad and others, like it's not like a midlife crisis, but it is kind of like a what's next crisis. I guess you have, you know, you get married, you have kids, you have your house, you have your, you know, secure job. You kind of have a little bit of a plan, but then it's like you work exactly what you said. We work so hard with all these goals hitting boom, 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 boom. It's like, okay, now what?
Yeah.
There's not like a clear direction forward.
Yeah. Because I mean, some people have, I feel like, with their career, and it's just going to the next level, next level, next level.
Sure.
But not, I mean, the majority of people can't have that. You know, only so many can follow that path. And so it's like, yeah, what is next?
And that's where we got into all this and woke up to things and really leaned into our faith. And I feel like that's where we just, again, humble ourselves and like kind of pray and go with whatever God has for us, like trusting in his will and the path he has.
Yep.
And I will say,
and just like begging,
literally
begging for guidance and, you know, show us like where you want us, Lord, not for us to make the plans, which is what we have always done. It's us making the plans and trying to reach those goals. And we've been pretty successful with that until all the cascade of things that led us down. Is kind of like falling down a flight of stairs, like boom, 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 down to rock bottom. And then what do you know? God was there at the bottom to bring us back up.
Yeah, something that stood out to me a lot the other day in church was the concept of like, don't try to do your own thing and like pull Jesus to you and to wrap yourself, or try to pull him to wrap around whatever you want to do, but like jump into him and what he wants you to do. And then that will, just like everything, as we talk about, putting the order and everything will kind of come fall into place.
Well, what I was telling you about the other day, where I just kind of had one of those times where I don't know if it's like God speaking. It's not like God speaking to me, but just laying a message on my heart, or I don't know the way to phrase it. It's more than just like, oh, I had this thought. It feels different.
Yeah.
Of just like laying the groundwork. And I guess I was just kind of getting down about, you know, the podcast wasn't like performing as well as I wanted it to, or, you know, coming up with just these stupid stuff that doesn't matter. And so it just was a reminder of like, we're laying the groundwork where we don't know what the future holds. Only God knows. And we feel like this is what we're supposed to do right now. And that's all that matters. Like, it doesn't matter when or if the podcast is going to take off and be super successful. It doesn't matter if it ever is super successful. Like, what even does that mean of super successful? We could be changing. If we have 50 views on the podcast, then that's 50 people who might be learning something new or changing their life in one small way or hearing about Jesus for the first time. Like, that's huge. And so maybe that's the entire reason that we're supposed to be doing this right now. And so it's just, God, this is what the trap we've always fallen into, of wanting to know the end of the story. And we never are going to know the end of the story. And so we have to just follow one step at a time, walking back up the staircase, basically, one step at a time. And so we're on this step right now, and we're going to keep doing this as long as it feels right, and just continue to ask the Lord to guide us and show us very clearly, because we constantly, or I do at least, I'm like, I'm not that bright. You got to show me, make it very obvious. slam shut all the doors that aren't for me and put like a glowing sign, this one right here, so that I know exactly what to do.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another thing we kind of mentioned was getting through health issues. I feel like that's been a huge, not barrier, but just weight on our marriage. You know, if you have to choose one thing, like I feel like health is one that we've had to battle through a lot. And mostly I would say with me from more of a physical standpoint. And then from you from more of a mental standpoint and psychological, like, yeah, that side of it. And I think mine stems from...
What are you trying to say, babe? I'm crazy, okay? We already established that.
So for me, like, and I guess it's really from, you know, how did it impact you getting me through my cancers and also my, you know, I have a lot of gut issues that are like ongoing and have always kind of plagued me. And my mom passed away of bile duct cancer, which is, you know, in your gut region when she was like 34 or 35. So I've always had this like kind of intense awareness of my body. So like anytime I don't feel right, like I had to go through a season of really wanting to find, and I was not as faithful as I was now. So I couldn't just give it up to God. I don't think it was really hard for me. So I went through a lot of just weight on my health and what doesn't feel right and want to explore this and that. And it was ongoing for years with that. And then layering in the cancer on top of that.
Yeah.
So it was a lot.
Basically culminating in our worst fear of, maybe not the worst because it was something that could be fixed, but pretty terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think I noticed or didn't pay attention or didn't see it clearly enough how much that weighed down on you.
Yeah.
Going through that. So you want to talk a little bit about your side of it?
Yeah, I think it's definitely something, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I never felt like a true division between us, I guess, in terms of the health journey and all that. But it's just something very unexpected, right? Like you have your marriage vows of in sickness and in health, but on your wedding day, when you're saying that, you're not really thinking about the in sickness part of it. But then I feel like for most people, it's going to come a knocking at some point, to varying degrees, obviously, but it just is obviously very scary to think of your spouse having cancer, having a major surgery, just everything, you know, for the rest of your life, just worry. And I think, like you said, with your mom, we just always had that fear. Like, and I feel like I always just kind of pushed it down, you know, even like before we were married. And obviously I've known the story of your mom for, I think before we were even dating.
I'm sure.
Knew.
Yeah.
But, just I would get that thought sometimes, like, what if that happens to him? What if he dies at a young age? And then everything with my dad really kind of, again, it's like your worst fears coming true, and seeing someone pass away at a relatively young age, 56 years old, and just thinking that, kind of placing yourself in those shoes of what if that happens. I mean, we still can say that.
Yeah.
You can die any day of your life. So what a profound statement.
We all can. Yeah.
The only guarantees in life are death and taxes, or whatever the saying is. So I think you just, when you're in your 20s, I feel like most people are just not thinking about that or worrying about that. So at times it felt unfair. And I don't know if I ever really felt like I blamed you at all or like held it against you, but it just felt very unfair that we were having to deal with it at such a young age. We had a 6-month-old baby and a 3-year-old, not even 3. I don't know. Yeah, she was not even 3.
Yep.
Georgia was 6 months old. And, you know, then just layer on, like, I feel like all these things happen and just layer COVID on top of that. So just the stress of 2020 that everybody felt, that everyone was under with your job, like all those things. And so honestly, it's like, I think we just have such a strong foundation. I mean, we're just each other's best friends. We're all each other has ever known. There's no one else that I would want to do this life with, whatever it is. And so I think it was just almost a chance for us to strengthen our marriage in the fact of like, we're going to whatever we're served on this platter of life, we're going to take it on together and like, thank God, get through it in this case. But certainly through it, there were times of frustration and just exhaustion and fear and stuff like that were hard. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, just better together and getting through it. I think this is kind of not related exactly to this, but, and I don't think this has never been anything I've thought or you've thought, I'm sure, but like there's the foundation of like divorce is like never an option.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think that's the case for a lot of people.
Well, I think we're blessed in the fact that we both came from families that also felt that way.
Yes.
You know, for both of our parents had and that same foundation of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And our grandparents too. I mean, we don't have a lot of divorce in our immediate line of family. So. And
I think some of that was built, or a good portion of that too, built on the faith of our Catholic faith. And like, that's obviously a big thing with Christianity and all of that. So like, again, that's not like, oh man, we really want to get a divorce, but we can't get out of this marriage or what, anything like that. It's just like,
it's not even something that ever comes to mind. Like,
but I just wanted to bring it up in the sense of like, I'm sure that is not the norm. And I think,
well, seeing how many people do end up divorced, I would say you're right.
Yeah. But I think maybe for those who are struggling, like if you don't have that as an option or think about, and obviously there are cases when like abuse, like,
yeah,
there are,
again, with the caveats,
the caveats. Yeah. Right. But like generally, I think you don't want to ever jump to anything that quickly. Like we're meant to, you know, God wants us to find someone and marry them, and in sickness and health, like you can do this with this other person. Like this is your spouse. Like,
yeah,
this is your best friend. This is the
till
person.
Death do us part. I think this is actually, you probably don't even realize this is actually kind of a taboo topic in the church, like in Christianity of, you know, and I'll admit I'm not well versed enough in what exactly the Bible says about it, but I know you're not supposed to get divorced. That's why it's till death do us part. And I think that the church is kind of soft on that. The church meaning Christians in America as a whole, around the world probably. I don't know. But I think it's something that has just become culturally a norm and accepted, and well, you know, I want to live my best life and you're holding me back from that. And people don't grow together and people grow apart. And so what do? They just get divorced, and, you know, it's as if it's no big deal, but there's a lot of ramifications, especially when children are involved. And it's just not what's best for the children. And so I think it shouldn't even be an option on the table, especially, I mean, I know those stories are out there where somebody does get cancer and then that makes the other person want to leave. And that just like breaks my heart.
That's crazy.
Like that, I'm sorry, but you're kind of just an evil person. Like, how can you leave somebody when they're at their literal lowest? It doesn't get lower than that in life. And that just makes you want to leave. Like, that's terrible.
It is.
It's so sad.
So, yeah, thankfully we don't have a lot of experience in that, and I know there's a lot of people going through a lot of things, but I just wanted to bring that up as something that's I think can be helpful, is if you think about that as not like a cop out or easy.
Yeah, and
easy.
Certainly
and that's really
not coming from a place of judgment, because you never know the whole story. But I think sometimes people don't get the tough love that they need, and a lot of people going through divorce, I don't think anybody wants to get divorced. I think it's hard for even the people who do ultimately get divorced. I imagine that's a hard process to go through. But do they have people in their lives encouraging them to work on their marriage and bring faith into, that's obviously what's missing from like 99% of problems in this country and in this world, is that people aren't putting God first. And so everything is built according to his design. And so when he's not at the top, it all doesn't work out well.
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like, and I don't have any stats on this, but I really do feel like from a men's perspective, again, if you have a community of other men that you can talk like honestly about like what's going, and I'm not talking about like a group. I'm not like 3 other people that you can like openly share, like,
or
it's a
even
safe
one,
or
like,
even one.
if you have one close friend that you can open up to, that's a true friend. I think that is amazing.
Yeah, and I think it's critically important to have that person also share your faith. Like, I think it needs to be another faithful Christian man or woman that you have, because a big part of that relationship too is, and what the Bible talks about is your ability to like repent for your sins and like share your sins and, you know, confess to your brothers and sisters. We're asked to do that in the Bible. And I think not a lot of people have that outlet. And it is truly different to like talk to other people about, hey, you know, I really messed up. I need to bring this to the light. There's something profoundly powerful about being able to do that. And you should do that with your spouse too. Like, we have a set of marriage questions that we try to do monthly. We haven't done in a while, but there's some great questions.
We will be doing it this month.
Thanks to our friends Dan and Jess, who kind of led us on this. They're one of the guys from my group. They do this, and we're bringing that into our marriage, and we can post those in the show notes or on Instagram. But they're just critically important questions that, and one of those is bringing stuff to the light. So you should be doing this with your spouse too. But I think it's important to have, in our case, like a men's group to do that. And I would bet that if more people had that, there would be less divorce. There would be a lot less problems in general. But it's just a different
Well, the
outlet.
problem is that most of the time that men are getting together is to sit on the couch and watch football all weekend, and just, you know, they're not sitting down to communicate and be vulnerable. I mean, how many men do you know that are being vulnerable with anyone?
Yeah.
So, but I was going to say, from a cultural perspective, I think what has gone once again against God's design is that the culture wants to bring women into this place of empowerment and wanting to be the leader and wanting to be the girl boss or whatever, all the different, you know, self-love and all of those things. And that just doesn't work in a marriage. The man is supposed to be the leader biblically, which again, people aren't working off a biblical model, which is part of the problem. And so if then the woman is trying to take over, like, it just doesn't work. Women, we're not designed to carry the stresses of the world the way that men are. We have to let the men be the provider and take on certain stressors that they can handle. Like, you're designed to be able to handle things differently than we're designed to be able to handle. Like, we're designed to be able to handle birthing humans, growing and birthing humans. You're not able to handle that particular stress, but there's other stresses that you're able to handle. So I'm just so tired, and I feel like the pendulum's swinging back a little bit, but I'm just so tired of this, like, women empowerment. It's literally International Women's Day today, so this is a great day for me to be bringing this up. We don't need to be better than men. We're both equal in different ways. We're strong in different ways. If you want to say we're better at certain things and they're better at certain things. Our society just wants to stomp out men and say that you guys aren't good at anything. And it's just not true. It's not reality. And so I think people don't realize, because you might be sitting there listening to this like, yeah, I don't adhere to any of that. But unless you're really in tune with yourself and your beliefs, because I've had to check myself, like, it affects you more subconsciously than I think you're probably willing to admit initially. Just rewiring your brain back to a more biblical foundation. So I highly recommend doing that.
Yeah. And as we talk about rewiring, I think we want to talk about, I think a lot of you might be on this journey of trying to wake up to things. Hopefully that's part of why you're listening to this podcast and learning new things. We have a lot to learn too, but I think part of that journey, or I almost guarantee that journey, is one of you in your marriage is learning things at a faster rate, absorbing all this information and wanting to make changes, and your spouse might not be there with you. From either possibly fighting against the grain, others maybe from an indifference standpoint, and others from, I don't know if an ignorance is the right word, but like,
well, it is ignorance. Kind of, I think it has a negative connotation, but
yeah, it's
ignorance. It means not knowing the topic.
Yeah. And
not being knowledgeable on it.
Exactly. So maybe not wanting to change or wanting to change and not knowing that they want to change, but coming from more that ignorant
just
side.
not even being aware of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that was pains me to say that was part of our journey.
Well, I feel like it typically when it's more problematic, it's typically the woman who is the one kind of leading these changes. And I think just with the online community, it seems like it is the moms, like the mama bears, you know, we're coming at it from a perspective of wanting to protect our children, but then also, you know, that applies to, a lot of it applies to the adults as well. And so the moms kind of learn about it, and then, you know, you dads are off working and providing for the family. You're not really on these social media platforms as much usually. And so you're not seeing what we're seeing and what we're learning about and what we're hearing about, and being able to, you know, listen to a podcast during nap time or whatever it is. So I think that seems to be the common thread. I haven't really heard of, and probably because I just don't deal with a lot of men, but I personally don't know of a situation where the man woke up first and the wife like wasn't willing to go along with it. I have not heard that story.
That's true. I haven't heard that either.
Yeah. It's always the mom learning about it, getting freaked out, and then bringing the husband along. And sometimes they won't.
Yeah. So
how did we basically get through that and like end up on the same page now, and like fully on the same page on everything?
Yeah. And to be honest, there's probably some still things that you know more than I do, and that
but I think that now we're on the page where you can just like instantly, you're like, okay, I'm going with it, because
you get over a hump.
You just learn like to see things differently. And once you kind of get to the root of everything,
yes,
you're just
it's
like,
so much easier.
Okay, yeah, everything I know is backwards. And so you just wait to find out what the real answer is.
That whole asking why thing, like, it takes on a whole new meaning.
Yeah.
But to get there, it takes a lot. There's a lot of hills you got to get over until you finally just dive into that and like, yep, all right. So, man, it was a journey to get here. I think fundamentally, like at the bottom of all of it, is you have to have that trust in the relationship and know, trust, like trusting your spouse. Like I fully trusted Katie. I think my biggest thing, I think I came from somewhat of the ignorant side of just like, I didn't know about all of these things or all of the research or all of the different rabbit holes that each one of these things get. I came more from like, I think twofold. One, not knowing. And then two, how can that be true? There's no way like there's that much evil, or like, why would they be doing that? Or like everybody else is doing this. Like, so saying that now is so hard, but like, I live in a corporate world.
Well, you think that the world is this overall good place, I feel, which again, it feels weird to say that. You think that, you know, most people are good and overall it's a good place, and, you know, whatever the majority is doing, that must be right. Like, you know, whatever's right will ultimately prevail into what the world is doing and the way that it's going. And so then kind of learning, just flipping that around in 180 and realizing that, in fact, doing the opposite of what everyone is doing is better.
Yes, which is, your dad always said, like, I know that your dad always was one
we zig when they zag.
Yes.
That was like my whole life growing up, like from the literal version of like, if we're in a crowded theme park and everybody's going on one path, we would find a different path to get to wherever we're going, to just the fundamental ways of life. You know, our family had a different mindset on a lot of things than others did. Which I think only benefited me and made me who I am today. So
100%.
Very thankful for that.
Yeah. And like I said, you're so strong, and that's been awesome. And you have, like I said, amazing discernment, which has been another thing, part of the trust and all of that helped me. I think the other thing that was difficult is when you go against the grain, it is not the easy thing to do. And again, saying that now is so hard. Like, so, like, I can't believe I'm saying that. But
well, it's not easy to do. And like, I think we used to view hard differently. Like it still is hard to go against the grain, but now we want to do it because we know there's something good on the other side of the hard.
Yeah. But I think what slowly started to chip away at me is like, obviously I come from the side of valuing research and like the facts and what's all behind that, and like realizing that things are pushed to us for a particular reason. Things are marketed to us for a particular reason. There's big money and things behind, even like the things that are presented as facts are may not, there's another side that is just not presented there. Like you have to really dig to see that there's just as valid, possibly even there are definitely more valid points against what is shown to you. And what I'm talking about is like, if you were to search a particular topic in Google, maybe the first 100 results are all kind of the same. But in reality, if you use something else like DuckDuckGo or whatever other search engines or whatever, like there are facts that go against that, like facts that go against that, and research studies that go against like what the norm is. And you have to understand the reason that those things are pushed, those first 100 search results, is like you have to understand who funded that, and like why would they want you to go down this route, and like what's the point. And you know, a lot of it comes back to the money and control and all that, which we can dive into more. But I think breaking through and realizing that that is actually a truth of life, that there is evil and that there is a purpose for guiding people a certain direction, is hard. And it's going against the grain.
Yeah.
But when you start doing this, so I think what's important for folks to hear is, for me, what worked for me, I think, was providing me resources with, here, look into this yourself.
Yeah.
And also not attacking me for not knowing it or coming along fast enough. And I know that was really hard. And I know we got in some fights about it. About me not coming fast.
Discussions, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, discussion. It sounds like you're telling your kids, like, we're not fighting, honey. We're just having a discussion.
But it really is true.
Well,
like,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like fighting just has such a negative connotation to it. But yeah, fighting, whatever. Yeah, that's what I was going to say for the women out there who maybe your husband just isn't on board. But it's so hard too, because people have come back with, well, my husband won't do the research. You know, he won't read. I send him all this stuff. I send him things to watch. He won't watch it. He won't read it.
Ask him why.
There you go.
It's your point all the way back. Like when people have their opinion or have
Why
a certain
do you believe that?
Why do you believe that?
And I think too, it's a hard conversation to have, but you have to go back to that trust. It's like, well, if you're not going to trust me, then you need to do this research to learn and form your own opinion on. But if you don't want to do that, then I'm asking you as your wife to please trust me, because I have spent the time and I have done the research and I feel very strong in this conviction, and I need you to get on board.
And what is more important?
Which is so hard. Like, I feel like just women will not speak to their husbands like that. Like, I've learned that I'm a great communicator.
You are a great
which is
communicator.
Really hard for the person I'm communicating to, because I'm so good.
It is true.
I should have been a lawyer. We always have said that.
Yes.
I would just drive them into the ground with my facts.
And this is another thing I have found out from talking to other men. Like, you are so good, and you meeting probably women in general, when we get into disagreements, like, you have 5,000 examples of this certain thing that you want to talk about. And like, I know I have examples, but I cannot think of one in the moment, which can be super frustrating. Yes, you have the power. Things you're better at than us. But
Remembering things.
Yeah, I think it really is about that conversation. And I think you phrased it perfectly. And I think,
which goes back to, like, you have to spend time together without the kids, you know, and without distractions, and without thinking about work, and without thinking about the bills and the chores and the house is falling apart and all those things. Like, you have to set them aside and spend time together. And like, I feel like you want to have fun together, but you can't just always have fun together. Sometimes you have to take your time where you don't have someone asking for a snack over here every 30 seconds to have these more serious conversations as well.
Yeah. And I will say, as a man, and I'm sure I'm not alone, like, wives have to say this stuff to us, and we may not at first agree or hear it, but things sink in.
Yeah.
And we turn around in time.
Plant seeds.
You got to plant the seed. If you're like too afraid to speak up or to say that, or like worried about how he's going to react, like, he may react bad at first, or
not at all.
not at all. That's tends to be mine. I kind of but we hear you.
And I'm like, hello.
Yeah, we
Are
hear you.
listening?
And I think reiterating, like, when you ever came to me and said, like, this is important to me, or this is important for our kids and our future, like, no solid, strong man would want to not listen to that, or like take that away and do his own thing. Like, again, we might not react the best in the moment, but we hear you. But we're not going to hear you if you don't say anything.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to like say those things. And again, what's more important than faith, health, family? And these are the things that you're looking into and diving into. So like lean into that. Like, this is super important, not just for me, but for our family and for our faith.
Yeah.
And that carries a lot of weight. And then it's on it's on them. They gotta.
Yeah. Ultimately it's on them. And I mean, I'm lucky to have someone who was willing to at least consider things and ultimately come around. But
yeah, so I think this whole thing, like, it is hard to bring people around. I think the other thing I was going to say is, like, don't just throw articles and stuff at them. Like, try other mediums. Like, for me, there are great videos about certain topics that are in documentaries and things like that. So, like, give other sources of medium for him to do research on or
honestly,
learn
like,
about,
a lot of it too can be social media posts of just, again, it has to be things that you have researched and know are true. But sometimes I would see somebody like sum it up really well in a social media post, and then I would just send that to you. And then it's kind of the Cliff Notes version of, well, I spent the time watching hours of videos and reading articles and reading studies. But if you don't want to do that, then like, here's kind of the gist, you know, of how I would summarize it. And somebody else just did it for me or whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like we've been a little like vague just because from our perspective, there's so many topics that we've gone through on this, but maybe we can like give an example or something. So I feel like a big one that we really did a 180 on was masks during COVID. And so at first, I mean, we never fully thought like a mask was going to save you. And that's why we mostly stayed home. But for the times when we would go out, we did wear a mask and thought it had some sense of protection to it. But then I started to learn more about it and see kind of the other side and the actual reality and research, which now more about that has come out, but that's not new information. Like that was available to find years ago at this point. And so I feel like that one was hard for you to accept because I was like, we need to stop wearing masks. Like, this is so dumb. Like it's not protecting us. It's not doing anything. And like you had to somehow get on board with that one. I feel like that one took like a long time for you to get on board.
I think it did. I think it did because even if it was true, I think it was hard to get over one, like
the brainwashing.
Well, 100% true. I mean,
it was hard for me too. I mean, again, don't expect your husband to like, you've been looking into something for days or weeks, and then you finally tell your husband about it. Don't expect him to just jump on board. Like, that's not fair at all. And I totally did that. And it wasn't fair to you. But I mean, it's hard because then you've come to your conclusion and like you're passionate about it and you want your husband to just be like, oh yeah, you're totally right. But that's not really fair to expect. So,
and I think the thing with the masks was like, yeah, obviously all the social pressure, obviously all the things like, yeah, masks are effective. All of that is like one thing. I think the other thing for me was like, well, what's the downside? Like, why wouldn't it seems more risky? Like, even if they're not working, like maybe they're working a little bit or like whatever. So like, why wouldn't we just try? Like, what's the risk not to do it? But as you come to find out, not only are they not effective,
they are
harmful. And I think that is what eventually finally got me over the hump of like, and building the faith and like how we were like designed to heal, and it is better for our, like, we are here to like breathe air and get sunshine and eat healthy. Most of the things that were happening bad with COVID was comorbidities and like just general being unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
So as we focused on health and improving that and trusting more in God and knowing that like things are going to be okay, like it was detrimental to be doing that.
Yeah.
And now looking back on pictures, it's total cringe.
It's more than cringe. Like, it physically hurts me.
It does.
Not
Especially on our
so much
kids.
for us, but yeah, for our kid.
Kid at the time. Yeah. So it was hard going. That was a big against the grain.
And that was also one where, like, everyone knew you were against the grain, right? Like, nobody knows I'm against the grain on being pro-life unless I wear this t-shirt, you know?
Yeah.
I can hide that if I choose to. Back then, if you were going out without a mask, like, you were one of few. You were unique, and everyone was judging you, and you knew they were judging you. So that was a special experience.
It was. And I mean, we did it I feel like near the end-ish of, like, I don't know. I feel like we didn't do it too, like, our chiropractor and those we like.
No, we weren't like
always,
super
like,
early on,
from the
but we
beginning,
were
like,
way ahead of a
everything.
lot of people, honey.
That's true.
We were way ahead of a lot of people.
Yeah. And look at that. We were right.
Yeah.
You were right.
Not surprised at all. Like I said,
No, I'm not surprised at all. Yet.
all the things that are coming to light now are not new studies that have been done where, oh my gosh, so sorry, we were wrong about this. Like, no, like I remember I watched a video. I shared it to Instagram, so some of you better watched it. It was like 45 minutes long, so I know none of you watched it. But he went through, there were 12 peer-reviewed studies, which it's like the top tier of what you can have in a study is what all 12 of these were, dating back, many years up to, the most recent one was not that long ago. He went through each one and, like, explained the study and, like, showed how masks were not effective and, like, medical settings and all this stuff. And it just, I mean, once you see that and know that, like, how can you believe anything else? I don't know. It's just like, so.
That was the other thing is, like, the place I worked, they have done their own research and simulations and all of these things of people I trust and all of that. And it's like, it's hard.
Do you still trust them?
I think they were doing the best stuff. Like, I think intentions, I don't think there was evil, like, I don't think there was, like, bad intentions or anything. I think people were trying to do the best. Okay. Well, not government, like, all right. Yeah. Okay. I don't think we'll ever let that happen to us again. It won't happen to us again. And we don't want this to happen to any of you guys again, or all of us as a country. Like, we have to look back on these things and realize what happened. And I think more people are waking up to that.
And I think a lot of people knew that the masks weren't effective and they didn't want to be wearing a mask, but they didn't want to be the pariah of society and have all eyes on them everywhere they went. And so they just put the mask on because they didn't want to deal with it. And so I think there's a little picture that I saw, I've seen many times over the years now. And it's like, at first there's like a guy with a whip and a whole crowd of people like on their knees. And then one guy from the crowd stands up, and then like more people stand up, and eventually the whole crowd is standing up, and the one guy with the whip is obviously defeated. And that is literally us versus the government or your company or whoever it is. Like, people have got to stop being afraid to stand out in the crowd. Like, I used to have, growing up, I had a poster in my bedroom that was from like the Scholastic Book Fair. Like, you remember the book fair?
Yeah.
I loved that thing. And I had a poster that said, stand up for what is right, even if you're standing alone. And that has just like always, that's always stuck with me. And I got to experience it firsthand. So, that was fun.
This is not the easy path. It is the right path.
Yeah. But as we found out, like I said earlier, there's good things on the other side of hard. You gotta, if the choice is hard or easy, like, just choose hard. That's a better choice. It's going to be better in the long run.
Yep.
Easy is always better now and harder later. You're just delaying the hard. Just do the hard now, get it over with, and you'll be better for it.
All right. So we're going to kind of wrap it up there. I think we talked a lot about getting through things in our marriage, priorities, and then how to get your spouse to be brought along the journey and waking up to all the things that we're going to continue to talk about on this podcast.
Yeah.
So I hope that was helpful. We really,
I think it all goes back to like just marrying your best friend.
Yes.
And having that. Even, I feel like we used to say that even when we were just dating. We had that foundation of friendship first. Like, we were friends first. And then we started dating and just grew our friendship as well as our love for each other. So that is just,
I feel like you should be able to say you're better together.
yeah.
Like we've always said that. I haven't heard other people say that, but I hope other people do. But like, it is so evident with
I
our
think we
relationship
are
from
a
early
little
on.
unique though, in that I feel like I see a lot of other couples and they kind of more do their own things. And of course they come together, and like, I'm sure they're happy marriages in their own ways. But like for us, we love to be together. Like we hate when we're apart.
Yeah.
We always would prefer to just be together and like be doing things together.
And things just work so much easier. I don't know what it is. Like it's always been like that. When any time like we've been apart, it seems like it spurs more arguments or whatever. But when we're together, it's better. Together we're better. But your situation might be different. I think the most important thing is coming together on these big topics and the things that's most important for your family and for your relationship with God. And you have to be strong on those. If you want to do other things outside of that, I guess it's whatever works for your marriage. But
yeah, I think we always had a good marriage, and then now adding faith into it and learning more our biblical roles, it's just better than it's ever been. And I know it's going to continue to get better and better, which I can't even imagine it getting better, but I know it will.
yeah,
So
it's so exciting. I feel like we're like,
yeah,
I don't know, we're at this like it's so exciting.
it feels like new again in some ways. Like I feel
we've been through
like
so many
those, like,
seasons
butterflies.
already. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's end the podcast.
Night, guys. No, but we hope this was helpful. We really enjoy talking to you all and really appreciate that feedback. So again, please leave a 5-star review, leave us some comments, please connect with us. We're here for you all and we want to learn from you. And if you have thoughts and opinions, like put them out there. With that, have a good one.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.